right now. And before Sam starts this training session, thank you for making the time to be here today. I just want to ask you something. I know that some of you are going to be posting on behalf of somebody else. So at the end of this session, if you could please send me your name and tell me who are you going to be posting on behalf, so we can create teams in Hootsuite Enterprise and give you the rights to do so for those people.
You should have that in the spreadsheet. We gave you all that. It should be in there. If you want, we can take it offline.
Okay, we can take it offline.
Yeah, we should. I think we gave you all that. Maybe
Okay.
an early version of the file, so we'll have to dig it up.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
Thanks. Thank you. Yep.
There you go, Sam.
All right, so thank you everybody for joining today's session. Before we kick things off, I just want to kind of echo what I had talked about yesterday, where today's session is intended for the group that will be attending next Friday session. So this has been set up kind of for those end users. Some of it's been kind of simplified because there are some pieces that the more complicated pieces that you as administrators will need to know, but the end users won't necessarily need to see all of this. So keep that in mind if I'm kind of speaking at that lower level. That's why. If you've got any questions or comments on the content of today's presentation, please definitely let me know. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat. Syria will be in there as well. And you will see a couple of places in here where I talk about today as if it's next Friday. And that's why we're just doing the run through of what we'll be delivering next week. So this is part 2. The audience will have seen the Amplify training on Monday. Hopefully they've got all of that set up. They've set up with Proofpoint. Everything's ready to go. And then on the Friday session, we're showing them the Hootsuite Enterprise training. So again, I'm Sam Anderson. I'm your training specialist. I'm hopefully a familiar face at this point. Little bit of housekeeping that I want to run through before we get into today's content. If you've got any questions, please submit them into the chat. Okay, so Tony's asked a question, is Hootsuite Enterprise the same as the Hootsuite Dashboard Desktop? Yes, I'm going to actually show you exactly what that looks like as part of this presentation, because it can be a little bit confusing for new users when there's different terminology and you've received invitations to a couple of different apps and tools. So I'm going to be including that in today's session.
Yeah, good. That's important, Sam, because I'm confused and I've been involved in this from the very beginning as to all the different names of different things. I think we just have to simplify it, come up with consistency, and say Enterprise is for you to do this, Amplify is for you to do this, and Proofpoint is for this. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I've set it up that way today.
Excellent.
If you've got questions, check in with Tony or Sharon. I'll be diving a little bit deeper into some of your additional support resources at the end of today's session. You'll receive this deck as well. This call is being recorded, and make sure that you have received your email invitation to join Hootsuite. You may have already logged in at this point. Just want to touch quickly on the training program. This is session 2. So on Monday, you saw the Proofpoint and Amplify introduction and setup training. Today, we're getting into Hootsuite Enterprise, where you can start crafting custom content and managing your scheduled content. And then early next year, expect there to be a 3rd training session related to building your personal brand on LinkedIn. So for today's training session, I'm going to kick things off by talking a little bit about the tools that have been provisioned to you so you understand the differences, and we'll look at the content approval overview. That way, when we get into the tool and we work through publishing, you'll have an understanding of what happens with that message once you have sent it or scheduled it. We're going to look at how you can compose custom pieces of content, as well as take advantage of the templates that have been built out for you. Then, once you've scheduled those messages, we're going to go and look at everything that's been published on your LinkedIn channel. We're going to look at your upcoming scheduled content, if you've got any in place, and we'll also talk a little bit about how you can engage with your network on LinkedIn. Toward the end, we'll recap on some support and resources. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end, but again, please don't be shy. Add things into the chat and we can address them as we go, or kind of shelve them for later if they're not relevant to what we're looking at that moment. And just a reminder, there's a training survey you'll receive again every time you come to training with me. You'll get an invitation to provide your feedback through that training survey link. So at this point, I want to take a moment just to talk about the tools that you've been given access to. On Monday, you received access to Hootsuite Amplify. That's the mobile app, and that is where you're going to go whenever you don't want to create your own content. You want to find something that's already existing for you, pre-approved marketing content that is ready to be shared out to your LinkedIn channel. You don't need to do anything with it. You can just click share immediately, and that's going to go out to your network. That is the mobile app, so we made it really easy for you to check in on that when you're on the go, when you've got a few minutes, and it's super simple to start publishing content. Hootsuite Enterprise is our focus today. Now, you're going to hear a couple of different ways that this is referred to. If you hear Hootsuite Desktop, if you hear Hootsuite Enterprise, or the Hootsuite Dashboard, all of those are kind of the same thing. It's what you're going to go to on your laptop or your computer. It's where you're going to go to hootsuite.com and log in. And here is where you can do things like look at all of the content you've posted. That's going to include anything that you've published from Amplify, as well as your custom content that you're publishing through Hootsuite. It's also where you can manage your scheduled messages and where you can monitor what's going on LinkedIn, and you can engage with your audience from that tool. So these are the two tool sets you have available. One is content that's ready to go, and the other is where you can do custom content. If you have any questions about this, please let us know. Sometimes it is a little bit confusing when you're getting up and running and you've got a couple of different places that you can go to. So let us know if you've got any questions there. And just like yesterday, I'm apologizing. I have a little bit of a frog in my throat. So if you hear me go on mute for a second, I'm just coughing. I'm so sorry. Any questions at this point before we get into the content approval workflow?
No.
All right. So when you are publishing content in Hootsuite, you are protected by Proofpoint. We talked a little bit about Proofpoint on Monday when you installed Proofpoint's Social Patrol to your LinkedIn profile. That's going to be constantly checking in the background to make sure everything that ends up published on your LinkedIn account is compliant. In Hootsuite, when you are creating messages from the Hootsuite dashboard, this is also going to route through Proofpoint to ensure compliance. Now, the way this is going to work is any message that's created in Hootsuite needs to go to Proofpoint for review and approval before it will be published to the social channel. The way this works is you're going to create your message. Now, when you create it, and I'm going to show you more of this workflow in a moment when we get into the tool, but you're going to create your message, and then you've got two options. You can either schedule it for a time in the future, or you can opt to have it be published immediately. Even if you choose to publish it immediately by clicking send now, it's still going to go to Proofpoint for approval before it'll actually go live on the social channel. So keep that in mind. If you want something to be sent out maybe kind of middle of the afternoon and you send it through, it might take an hour or two, or it might even be the next day, depending on when you're scheduling that content. If perhaps it's at the end of the day, it may not be approved until the next morning. So keep that in mind when you are publishing messages. And if you want it to go out at a certain time, so for example, if you want it to be published in the morning or in the afternoon, you might want to schedule it for tomorrow or the day after at a more precise time. If you don't really care when it goes live, what you can do within the tool is just click send now. And the moment that it's approved in Proofpoint, it will be published immediately on that social channel. So it's going to go to Proofpoint for review. You're not going to have to do anything on that side. All you need to do is create the message in Hootsuite, and the rest is taken care of for you. Once it's been approved in Hootsuite, it's going to go, or sorry, approved in Proofpoint, it's going to go back to Hootsuite, and then that's where it'll either be published right away, or it will land in your calendar of scheduled content where you'll be able to view it. And then once that scheduled time comes up, that's when it will go live on the website. If you go into your content calendar and edit anything that's already been approved, it's going to circle back to Proofpoint for another review before it goes on Hootsuite. So Proofpoint is always the last tool to review that before it will go live. Now, if a message is rejected from Proofpoint, you'll be notified to let you know that an item has been rejected. It's going to come back to you. And then from there, if you want to modify that message, you can, or you can just discard it and create a new one. You're probably not going to see many messages be rejected, but that compliance feature within Proofpoint is making sure that you're not saying anything that is adverse to the brand or any sort of those trigger words that might cause something to be deemed not compliant. So words like guarantee, things like in that category, none of those messages can be published. And so that's where Proofpoint is going to be checking to ensure that your content is compliant. And I'm just checking in the chat now because I can see that there's a couple of little messages coming in. Okay, Tony has a question that says, I thought we're not letting people create their own content. They can only edit the templates. Is that accurate? I was under the impression we were allowing people to also start from scratch, but if it's purely working from the templates, then I'll adjust this training and I'll show you in the tool what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want individual users. Only the marketing people can create content. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, Siri, how do we handle this? Because we really want most of the people just using the pre-approved templates and editing those. Now, marketing will create content for individual people, a select group of individual leaders, and they want to put that out there. But they're administrators, so I think that's a whole different process, right? But we're not permitting 150, well, over time, 250 people the ability to just start writing stuff. Yet they're going to have to use templates to start.
Yeah. So for today's session, I asked Sam to communicate that the people who's attending today's session that they can create content from here. So we will make that distinction for when we do the training for the end users, that they're going to be using only the pre-approved templates that are as part of the content library. We can make that adjustment, no problem.
So I have a question. Some of the, and apologies if we talked about this already in a different meeting. Some of the templated content has like fill in the blank type of information.
Yeah.
And would that need to be routed?
Yes. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Edit the fill in the blank stuff, and then it gets routed for review and approval, because at least at the start, we got to make sure that people are filling in the blanks and kind of getting around the system and trying and putting things in there that aren't. So we're going to start that way. They get it in template, they submit it, it gets automatically routed to Proofpoint through the review and approval process, and then it goes back to the salesperson, for lack of a better word, for publishing when it's approved. Is that correct, Siri? I didn't say anything, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And we will show you, like Sam explained, where those templates are, how to use them in the compose box, and how is it going to show when it's being sent to Proofpoint. So we're going to be demoing that right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I'll make some adjustments here to emphasize that it's only from the templates that you'll be working. You will never be creating anything from scratch.
And can you just clarify to, well, don't say never, just say for now, like over time we may let them create some from scratch, because, you know, there are a few leaders that are set up as post-approval. There's like, how many people, Sharon? 10? That they can create their own content. Do you understand?
Are they going to be attending Friday's session?
Yes.
I think some of them are too senior to be attending, and I don't remember if all 10 are in phase 1 or not. Sharon, I don't remember.
They are all phase 1, and they've all been invited to attend.
So do
I
we
can
want...
go back and tell you who's accepting or not, but it sounds, I don't know who's just going to ask, do we want? We may need to have 2 different sessions.
Well, we can, if we have one session, we could just say there's a select group of you that we're piloting creating your own content. And those of you know who you are. Or you can tell them who they are. So that would apply only to a short list of you guys. And until we see how that all tests out, we're not going to roll it out to everybody. The rest of you will just use these templates and fill them in. I think there's a way to kind of massage that message and say, I don't think you have to have a separate training, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
The tricky thing is that if there are people that you don't want to take advantage of certain functionality, if we're showing them that during the training, that gets a little bit tricky because we're showing them something that they're currently not approved to do. So if you've got that more sophisticated group, basically, and when we get into the tool, I'll show you, it's just a matter of clicking new post or selecting from a template. But if you're building one from scratch, sometimes it looks a little bit different. So if you think that they're kind of more savvy and that they'll be able to figure it out because it's not super difficult, then you could just only work from templates, and we can call out those of you who are allowed to create your custom content. You know who you are. You will just click the new post button and start from scratch. But if we want to actually show that, then that's a little bit tricky if there are some people that you're asking not to use it.
I guess
I don't think we should touch on it. I think let's just go with everyone's using templates for now. It's not that these people are more savvy, they're more senior.
Okay.
So they might actually be the opposite of more savvy.
Yep, that
so
happens.
let's get them using it with templates, and then we can introduce to them, Tony, that they can create their own content. I don't even know that all of them know that they have been selected to create their own content.
Okay.
So I think we can just start off with, let's create templates, give them a week to create content with templates, and then we can have a follow-up with those 10 users, even on a one-off basis, marketing manager to marketing manager, to introduce that now you can actually create it from scratch.
The other thing that you'll see happen is even if some of those more senior people don't realize that they've been allowed to create their own content, they will probably just try to do it. And so on the proof point level, that's where you can approve their content if it's custom and it's fine. And then for anybody else who hasn't been authorized to create custom content, it's just going to backfire on them when you reject it because it didn't start from a template. So they'll learn really quickly what they are and aren't allowed to do kind of regardless.
But so there's no way to block them from creating their own if we know who they are?
No, but you can, that's where Proofpoint comes in, and you can reject any of those messages that have been custom from the users who you don't want creating custom content. Or if you like what they've created, then you can selectively approve it.
Exactly, yeah. Because if somebody is creating a content and it's compliant and it's good content, do you think that we really need to block that person from creating that content?
No, I don't. That's kind of, I kind of hear what she's saying, right, Sharon? I mean, team, if it's just a straight, it's just, I don't want it to create a lot of strain on the compliance and legal folks and FINRA 24 folks where they're getting, I don't think this will happen. We just have to monitor it.
Yeah, and then
right.
You can also just put some guidelines in place. So just kind of as a rule of thumb, maybe you only want to be scheduling one piece of content per day, and try to not schedule a whole month at a time so that your compliance team doesn't get overwhelmed with messages that they need to review.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll adjust this. We'll focus just on the templates. You'll see this deck will get tweaked a little bit. This approval workflow won't really change considerably because they'll still be able to make modifications to the template so the message is treated the same way. And even if they go and edit it later, it'll still go back to Proofpoint. So Proofpoint's always like the last check before something gets published. But we'll focus just on templates. And then for any of those more senior users who have questions, we can either we can support them kind of separately if they need to see a slightly modified version of the training later.
Good.
All right, so where are we at? Here we are. We're going to jump into the dashboard. And Tony has graciously allowed us to use his account for training today. Now, even though I'm logged into Tony's account, I don't actually have the ability to publish. So I'm going to show you what all of this looks like, but I'm not able to actually send or schedule anything in here. But now that we've taken a look at what that approval workflow looks like, I can kind of speak to when it kicks in as we walk through publishing messages. Before we get into composing messages, there's a little bit of housekeeping and overview that I want to walk through if you're new to this tool. When you come into the dashboard, you're going to be taken to your streams. Now, it might be a blank slate that looks like this that's prompting you to set up a tab, or you might see some streams of content similar to this. We're going to look more at this a little bit later in today's training session. From the left-hand navigation panel, there's different areas of the tool that you can get into. For example, to manage all of your scheduled content, you'll go into Publisher. I'll be taking you in there a little bit later. Down at the bottom, you can access some help options. I'll be recapping on some of the support options specific to BNY at the end of today's session, but I just want to call out that our live chat team is online 23 out of 24 hours a day. If you've got a quick question or an issue or an error, they are wonderful, and they're usually online ready to take your questions and provide very, very prompt answers. You can also get into our help desk. Here you can see all of our support articles, and that ties into our education system. So if you've got questions like, how do I create a message, or how do I edit a scheduled message, you can either refer back to today's training session that's been recorded, you can check in with help desk, or of course you can reach out to the team here, and we'll make sure that you've got the information that you need. As I mentioned, there's a little bit of housekeeping. You're only going to need to consider these things probably the first time that you're working in Hootsuite, or if you are moving around. So from the top right corner, you likely have this little gray person avatar. If you've been an eager beaver, you might have your own face there if you've already added in a photo. From there, come into Account and Settings, and there's a couple of things here that I'll need you to check. Firstly, make sure that your name is correct. Sometimes it'll just go away, Okta. Sometimes it'll default back to your email address, or if you prefer to change this over, so if Tony wants to change this to Tony rather than Anthony, he can. Just make sure that this is the name that everybody knows you at work. Include your last name. That helps your teammates and administrators. If you want to add in an image, you can. If you want to add in your title or description, these are optional, but you can add them in if you want. Really importantly, you'll need to make sure that your time zone is set correctly. All of your scheduled messages will align to this time zone. It's also going to determine the timestamps for anything you see within the tool. If it's set incorrectly, adjust it to the one that you need. Make sure you click Save Account Info, and you'll see Hootsuite refresh, and then that will update your time zone for you. If you navigate into another area of settings, it'll revert back to whatever it was before. So that's where it's really important to make sure you click Save Account Info. And then if you need to do anything else in settings, you can come back in.
I got a lot of things I got to fill in. I thought I filled this in already. But I guess
you don't have to. It's your full name that's really the most important piece there, and then making sure your time zone's correct. The rest are optional.
I tried putting my photo in. I remember that. I took it and put it in sideways. Do you guys ever have that problem where you put it in and it goes sideways?
I've not run into that issue here. I've run into that issue with other tools. I know sometimes images can be a little bit wonky. So if you continue to have issues with that, let us know. We can check into it. Under preferences, if any of you prefer to work in a different language, you could toggle this over to Spanish or any other language, and you'll see everything is translated within the dash. There's also a button here to clear cached messages. This is basically the clearing browser cookies equivalent of Hootsuite. If you click this, it does not delete anything that's been published. It does not delete your scheduled messages. It doesn't change anything for anybody else. All it'll do is help speed Hootsuite up. If you notice that it slows down, you won't have to do this often, if ever. And don't worry, if you forget about it, we'll remind you where to find it later if you find that things are a little bit slow. If you do change the language that you're using Hootsuite in, I'd recommend refreshing your entire browser tab to see everything update for you. And then the last thing I want to call out here is there are some options for email notifications. Now, my recommendation is leave these as is for the time being. You'll likely never need to change them. You'll definitely want to know when things like scheduled messages fail to send. That'll happen once in a while. Sometimes we send something through to a network and there's an API issue and that message doesn't get published. You won't see it very often. When it does happen, you'll be able to come back in and repost it. So it's important to get that email if that's content that you did want to send out. At this time, you're not going to be using assignments. So with that, you can just leave those enabled. I'd recommend leaving them there, even though you'll probably not see emails on them. And then if you are at the approval level, you'll receive emails according to that. You'll also get emails when your message is rejected in pre-review, which is that Proofpoint approval process. This is an important one as well because that gives you the opportunity to go back in, make some edits to that message, and then send it back out for approval. Or if you don't want that message anymore, you can just delete it and start from a new template. So as I mentioned, I'd recommend leaving these as is, but if you find that you are getting a lot of emails, you can come in here and adjust accordingly. Now, there's two big areas that we want to take a look at today. The first of those is publishing messages, and then we're going to get into engagement a little bit later. So when you're publishing messages from within Hootsuite, you want to start next to this green new post button. There's a little drop down, and you'll want to choose Create from Template. All of the messages that you're creating within Hootsuite need to start from one of these templates. You'll then have the ability to customize that message and tweak it. Then it'll be routed to Proofpoint for review before it can be published. Now you'll notice that there are a handful of different libraries available in here right now. Most of them don't have content in there just yet. They are kind of placeholders for future content. So for now, go into the All Content folder. And from here, you'll be able to browse through and view everything that you might want to publish. You'll see a little preview of each one of those messages. You'll also notice that they say no social network. The reason for that is because when you are creating a draft that you're going to save as a template in Hootsuite, you have the option of selecting the social channel that it's going to go to in advance. And that doesn't really make sense because these templates are available for you to publish to your own channel. So you'll always see this no social network. If you ever see that it has been aligned with one specific network, you'll be able to change that over in the Composer, but most likely you'll probably just see that they're not yet associated with a network. So we can pick any one of these. We can see a little preview here. Now I'm going to show you later a different way of viewing and finding content within the content library. But for starters, we're just going to pick one of these and we're going to click Open in Composer. Now the Compose experience that I'm taking you into is a full screen experience within Hootsuite. Everything for this message is going to go into the left-hand side. And then once you've got at least a network selected, you'll see a preview on the right. So you'll get a sense of exactly what that message is going to look like on your social channel once it's published. Now you can start working in any order. You'll see that in the text field that template's already been brought in. If you want to start customizing your text right away, you can. We want to select the social channel that this message can go to. And here I'm going to select Tony's LinkedIn account. You'll notice that it's listed under private networks. It's only visible to me. So when you are looking in your own account, you are likely the only person who can see that channel. Or if you've got a teammate who is managing on your behalf, it'll only be you and them who are able to publish to your LinkedIn account. So here I'm going to choose Tony's account. Now that I've selected Tony's account, I've got a preview happening on the right-hand side. I can see that templated message that's already included. And then as we start making changes over here, we'll see it reflected on the right. You'll also notice that we've got a built-in character count. So you'll need to keep in mind that LinkedIn allows, I think, 600 characters. So if you go over that, you're not going to be able to publish your message. But in general, you can stay within those 600 characters and you won't run into any issues.
Can you just say again how you got it to show?
How I got it to show what, sorry?
How you got it to show in that black window on the right?
So it won't show a preview until I've selected a social network, and it'll say down here as well, it needs you to select one before it can start showing you that preview. And that's where, like, if I wanted to make changes over here, I can immediately edit that. But to get your preview, choose your social channel, and then that'll show up. So now what we want to do is look at our template and make some changes here. So there's been a lot of discussion at BNY conference about financial things. This obviously is going to get rejected, but I'm just showing you what this would look like for the purposes of working from a template. You've enjoyed some great panel discussions here, including, and then we would have maybe the technology panel. And from here, you're going to be able to just add that in. So you're kind of filling in the blanks from that template. And then at this point, you could send that message as is. Or if you have additional pieces that you want to add into it, you can. So say, for example, at that conference that you're attending, you've taken a really great photo and you want to attach that to your message, you can add that in. Remember that it's still going to go to Proofpoint and it's going to be reviewed for compliance. So if there are any rules or guidelines around what that image can or cannot include, keep those in mind. If you're not allowed to have other people in it, or if you need to avoid logos and whatnot, consider that when you are adding in images that are going to go into your messages. And if you decide to add in a link, so say, for example, there is a landing page for that conference that includes some information about the panel that you just attended that you're really excited about, you can add that link in, but that will also be reviewed by the compliance team in Proofpoint. So they'll also be checking to make sure that there's nothing on that page that is not compliant. So just keep those things in mind. The less modification you make to that templated message, the more likely it's going to be approved as is. And just consider that things like maybe your image has something wrong with it. If it gets rejected, you'll have an opportunity to recreate that message, maybe with a different image or no image. Now from here, I could select whatever image I want to upload. So if I go in, I can choose, pretend that this is the photo that I took at my conference. And if you want, you can make some edits right within the tool. So if I click into Edit with Creative Cloud, this is going to give me a bunch of different options. I can apply filters, I can change what this image looks like, I can even do things like crop it. So say, for example, you took a photo that has maybe a competitor's logo off on the left-hand side, you could come in here and just crop that out. Click Apply, and that's going to make those changes to your image right within the preview. Click Save, and that will update it from here. If there's ever a situation where you don't have a photo, but you'd like to include one, you can open your media library from here. Now that media library is just going to kind of overlay your preview. As soon as you close out of it, you'll go back to seeing what that preview looks like. Here you can see all of your content library images. And then if we toggle over to free images, this is going to give you a library with tens of thousands of royalty-free stock images that you can append to your message. So say, for example, you wanted just kind of a generic photo related to technology, for example. You could add in whichever one of these is the right fit and replace anything else that you previously had. So with here, I've added in a second image. I can close out of my media library. Now, LinkedIn only allows you to send one image at a time, so keep that in mind. And in this case, I could just remove the first one that I attached if I prefer to use this one instead. There we go. And that's going to update my preview. And same thing, even if you're attaching something from that free image library, you can still come in to Edit with Creative Cloud. You can crop that or change how it looks, and then update that, and it'll append to your message. Now, I just want to pause for a second. They will be allowed to attach links, correct?
Yeah, I think so, right, guys?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, I just wanted to double check.
I mean, why would they? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just pretend that for this message that we're sending out about this BNY conference, I've got a link relevant to that, or maybe it's inviting somebody to come and have a conversation at that event. So all you're going to do for your links is paste them right into your text field. Now there's a little pop-up here that says link found, want to track or shorten. That pop-up is going to go away after a couple of seconds. Don't worry, you haven't missed your opportunity. All that pop-up is a shortcut to get down to your link settings. From here, you can click edit. And now we've got a couple of options. Firstly, if there are presets made available to you, your administrators will tell you which presets to use, or they'll be applied automatically. If you don't see any presets and you haven't heard anything about them, don't worry, you can fully ignore that until you get more information. There are a couple of options here for tracking and shortening. So to get into those options, we're going to click Customize. Now, you're probably not applying tracking parameters to those outbound links. So if you don't know anything about this, that's totally okay. Ignore this top section. What you do want to do is shorten your link. And we do have the built-in vanity URL. So if I choose the second one in the link with your logo, and click Apply. And now the Pershing link that I have over here has been shortened to this custom BNY Mellon vanity URL. This does a couple of things. Firstly, it ensures, it signals to your users that it is an authentic post that is coming from the brand or from representatives of the brand. If that's a really long link, especially when you get into blog posts and whatnot, sometimes those links can be super long, and this is a nice way of making it short and tidy right within Hootsuite. It also sets your administrators up to see the click stats associated with those links, so they'll understand how many people are clicking on them, what sort of traffic are you driving from those links. So you'll always see the original one over in your text field over here, and then you'll see the converted vanity URL in your preview. If there's anything else that you want to include in this, you can add that right into the text field. Now, keep in mind that you'll need to consider the compliance regulations. But for example, if you wanted to categorize this as a particular hashtag, you could add that in. It's still going to go to Proofpoint for review. So make sure that you are using the correct hashtag and that you are allowed to do so. And you'll see that update over here, and that'll make that hashtag clickable when it is published on LinkedIn. Down at the bottom, you have the ability to add in tags. I believe the instruction, actually, I should just double check on this. We're telling them not to use message tags at this time, right?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know.
I think the answer, yeah, there aren't even any in here. So what we'll do is we'll just tell them, don't apply message tags at this point. If you are asked to add message tags, you'll get more information in the future and they'll be created for you. But at this time, you can just ignore tags. So once you've added in all of the content for your message, you've added in your link, you've shortened it over here, maybe you've added in a hashtag and you've updated that template to replace all of those little placeholders with the actual information you want to share. Once you're happy with this, you've got a couple of options. Now, I could send this immediately. This Post Now button would be lit up in bright green for me if I were actually able to post from Tony's account, which I'm not. Remember that even if you choose Post Now, it's still is going to go to Proofpoint for review. And depending on how busy that compliance team is, it may not be approved right away. So keep that in mind. The moment that they approve it, it will go live. Alternatively, you could schedule this to go out at a particular time. So if I want this to go out on Friday, for example, and I can choose when this is happening, and you can do this in advance. So say, for example, you know that you're very excited to see your coworker speak at a particular panel that is happening on Tuesday. You could send out a message maybe 5 minutes before just saying, I'm looking forward to this panel, provided there's a template that's relevant to that. So you can kind of plan ahead and set that up so that when that message goes out, it does tie into the event that you are planning to be at. Now that I've set it for Friday, November 9th at, no, not 3:55 a.m. That's not what we want at all. Change it over to p.m. This is going to go to the compliance team for review. Now, because I've set it to a couple of days away, it's safe to assume that they will have an opportunity to review it before then. If they get really, really slammed on the number of messages that they need to approve, it's possible that approval will expire before that time slot. So if you've got any concerns about the timeliness of your messages going out, work with Tony and your compliance team to see kind of what is the expected turnaround time. But if you give them a couple of days, it really shouldn't be an issue, especially if you're starting from one of these templates and all of your content is compliant. Now at this point, I would just click the schedule button. When you click schedule, it's going to close out of the composer for you, and you're going to get a little green confirmation message up at the top. So in this case, I'm not able to actually send it. I'm just going to discard this post. But what you would see right up here is a little green message saying, message successfully scheduled. It's been sent for approval. At that point, it now sits with the Proofpoint team. They're going to review it, and then once it's ready to go, it'll be published. So reminder, you always want to start from your templates. You can browse through all of them here.
Can I just make a point?
Mm-hmm.
So we have already established workflows for LLC, PAS, Lockwood, and Albridge.
Okay.
And those workflows were established for reviews and approvals, working with those different areas. So I just want everybody to know on this call that these people edit the templates and then they get routed to a workflow that will replace the printed and email back and forth review and approval process. Basically, there's a couple of gates, so there's a couple of levels of review and approval. For example, for LLC, which includes financial solutions, not including Lockwood, of course. LLC includes financial solutions, it includes IT, it includes GCR. The workflow is it starts with a marketing FINRA 24, me, Maureen, or Dawn. We approve it or we don't. If we approve it, say if we don't approve it, we can reject it and tell the user what they need to change, and then they change it, and it comes back to me or Dawn or Maureen. Then we approve it and we forward it to the next and final level of approval, which is LLC Legal, which is Caroline Munro, and if she goes in there and approves it. So it's pretty seamless and pretty good process. I just wanted to know.
Okay. So now what we want to do is take a look at what happens to scheduled messages. So if you need to go and view everything that's been scheduled, or if you want to make any changes to it, from the left-hand navigation panel, go into Publisher. Now let's check and see. Yeah, we've got some scheduled messages here. Depending on what level of access you have, you may only be able to see the scheduled messages for your own personal LinkedIn, and that's okay. But we'll just use what we see here as examples. Everything that's kind of grayed out are messages that were previously scheduled in Hootsuite and that have been published successfully. You'll see that there's a little green check next to them, and they've got a green sidebar, and you'll be able to go back and see previous messages.
Question, I don't know why there's messages scheduled for Friday. I didn't schedule anything for Friday, so that doesn't make sense.
This is not just for your account. This is across all of the brand channels.
Okay.
But because there isn't anything scheduled in your account, I'm just using these ones as examples.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, that's okay. So here you'll be able to see the upcoming messages that have been scheduled. You can click into these to take a look at that preview. If something has been approved, it's ready to go as is. But say, for example, you decide to make some changes to it, you can click this edit button, and that's going to take you back into the composer. Now remember, you still want to work from those templates that have been created for you, but if you wanted to change something, so say, for example, the speaker that you were seeing on the panel that you're talking about, maybe there's a new speaker instead and you need to make some changes there, you can. When you make changes and you go down to the bottom and click Save Edits, that's going to route it back to Proofpoint for another review before it can go live. You can also change when something is scheduled to go out. And you'll only be able to see content for the networks that you have access to. So in this case, I can see some of the brand channels. You likely won't be able to see these, and that's intentional, but you'll be able to click into any of these. Now, in some instances, if you have read-only visibility into other messages, you may be able to see it from here, but you won't have that ability to edit, and that's okay. And then under these three dots, you could delete a message as well. So even if it's been approved, it's ready to go. If you don't want it any longer, you can delete from here. Any questions on finding and viewing your scheduled content? Now, a quick note, for any of you who are using Amplify to schedule content in advance, you will see your Amplify content scheduled in here as well. That sets you up to kind of look overall to see if you've got a mix of your own custom template content as well as that pre-approved content from Amplify. Just to note that if you come in and maybe make edits to any of that Amplify content, it will go back to Proofpoint. We ask you not to make changes to what's included in those messages. But say, for example, you need to do something like change the date and time. You'll be able to do that even for things you've scheduled from Amplify, and then it'll go out at that time. Under the Content tab, I just want to call out that down below under Content Sources, you can get into Content Library. This is the same content that you will see from this little drop down next to the new post button. So all of the templated content that you see here is the same, but if you prefer to see a larger view of all of those messages, you can. If you choose one of these messages that you'd like to send out for the time being, this will change soon. For the time being, if you go to edit this, it's going to pull it up into the classic composer up at the top. From here, you'll choose your channel. You'll be able to modify the message and then send or schedule. Messages sent from this classic composer get routed to Proofpoint the exact same way. The main difference here is that you don't see a preview. So if you do want to use that preview and that custom BNY link shortener, what you'd need to do is find that same template from here and pull it into the main composer. We're in the process of kind of migrating this message composition flow. So over time, you'll see everything working consistently from that full screen view with preview, but there's still a couple of pieces that work from that older view. And this is an example when you're viewing the full content library, it'll default back to the old composer for now.
For purposes of the people on this call today, have we been entitled to see these yet, or permissioned? Because I was just, again, trying to follow along and I wasn't seeing any of that.
Is this Vicki speaking?
It is.
Okay. Content libraries, just so that you're all aware, they are assigned at the team level. So if they've only been allocated to one or a few teams and you are a member of different teams, you won't yet see them. So it's likely just that at the administrator level, we need to make sure that everybody has access to the right ones.
Yeah, Vicki, these ones are safe for everyone. So I think you should be able to see it. If you're not, let me take a look. But you should be able to see it.
Create from template, nothing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, let me check.
Thank you.
We'll check into that. And if anybody else can't see the content libraries, let us know, but we'll go and make sure that everybody should have access to them. All right, so I'm going to speed up a little bit because we've just got a few minutes left, and I want to quickly show you what the end users will see from an engagement perspective on Friday. So I'm going to start talking quickly, but we'll run through what they would expect during that session. This is your dashboard. It's comprised of tabs up at the top and then different streams of content within them. If you go and create a new tab, or when you first get into the tool, it might be prompting you to create your new tab. What we're going to do here is I'm just going to call this LinkedIn, and actually let's call this Tony's LinkedIn. You can click back into that title to rename it. You'll have 3 options available to you. Always go to browse all streams. The other 2 will be a little bit more limited, and to access your LinkedIn content, you'll need to go to browse all streams. Now from here, you may only have 1 network available to you, and that's okay. Tony's got more visibility into additional channels, but we want to select the LinkedIn account that you'd like to bring in here. And then you've got 3 options for streams. We can pull in your home feed. We can pull in your updates. And we can also see if there's anything scheduled, which I believe Tony doesn't have anything scheduled right now. So what I'll do is let me just grab a different LinkedIn account just to show you an example of what that feed looks like when there is scheduled content in it. So for Tony's, we don't have anything right now, and you'll see this if there's nothing currently scheduled. But this is what it would look like if you did. Up in the top right, you can change how much of this you're looking at one time. All of these streams can be dragged and dropped to be rearranged. And if you want to delete any of them from the top right corner, you can click delete. If you delete them, you can add them back in again. All you need to do to add them back in is scroll to the right for that add a stream panel. If you don't see it, it might be shrunk down to this little green plus button, and then that will open it back up again. Select the right account. You'll probably just have the one, and then you're back to your 3 options. So your home feed, I'm going to expand this a little bit so we can see a larger version. Here is the feed of everybody that you're connected to on LinkedIn. You can see the posts that they are sharing. Click to read more if it's been truncated. You can click these links. If there's any video content, you can play it right within Hootsuite. You can like these posts. If you've already liked something, this like thumbs up will be lit up in bright blue, and you can add in comments as well. Occasionally, if somebody has a very private LinkedIn profile, we won't be able to see their full profile from here. That's because of their settings and how LinkedIn lets us view things. Anytime you see the timestamp, you can click on that, and that's going to take you out to that original post on LinkedIn. And this might not show up for me because if they're a private user, no, in some cases I can't see it. But for Tony, if he's logged into his LinkedIn account, he'd be able to see this entire post from here. But it looks as though Anne's profile settings are a little bit limited when I'm looking at it within Hootsuite. And here you can see the rest of her post. And then as you scroll further back, you'll see older posts. So the newest will always be up at the top. And then you can interact with, engage with people right within here. If you click into their name, you'll see an expanded view of their profile photo, a little bit of their description. And then if you click that highlighted or that linked name, it'll take you right out to their full profile. The next stream over are your updates. So these are the things that you have published. You'll be able to see if anybody's liked your post. In this case, Tony's got 1 like on this new post. Again, sometimes it'll be truncated. You can click to expand. You can click that link to see the full version of it, or click into the item to see an expanded view of any attached media. As you scroll further back, you'll be able to see previous posts. Now, I was looking previously, when you see something that looks like this that doesn't have any, it looks like it doesn't have any content, those are instances where Tony has shared a company post and not added in any extra context. So again, just click the date to get out to that original post if you want to see what it looked like. And if there are comments, you'll be able to reply to people right within here. It looks like we don't have any comments happening on Tony's post right now, but you'll see them right down below.
And why is that? Because we're not allowed by company policy. But I share a lot of the posts that go up on the corporate handles.
Yes, so for all of these, if I click into this, for example, it'll take me to Tony's original post, and we'll see that it's just a share with nothing else included in it. If there had been a comment, we'd be able to see that. So that you'll see that occasionally in Hootsuite, and you'll see it in your home feed as well. Don't worry, it just means that somebody shared something without adding in any extra info. So that was a quick tour on the engagement side. I know that we're at the top of the hour. Are there any questions or comments that we haven't handled here? And I've seen that Siri has been in the chat handling some of those questions that have come in. I'm going to update this to focus purely on the templates aspect of things. If there are any other suggestions or comments, please let me know. And then kind of similar to what you saw yesterday, we're going to finish things off with just recapping on the support available to everyone. So if there aren't any other questions, all of you are free to go. Thank you so much. And then you've got mine and Syria's contact information as well. Please feel to reach out if there's anything you'd like to see different for next week's training sessions.
Yeah, I think it was good. Does anybody have any thoughts now before we wrap up? I think you're gonna what may lose people when you got real deep into like links and pictures, and but they got to know how to do it. So
and what I'll emphasize is if you wish to add a link, if you wish to add a photo, but if you aren't comfortable with that just yet, don't worry. You're free to really tiptoe into Hootsuite. You don't need to know how to do everything right away. And then as you've got more that you want to share with those messages, you can choose to add them in.
yeah, I know it's important to have like photos and links, so we want the posts to be valuable too. So I know there's a little fine line there.
The nice thing is that when we're thinking about early 2019, when we do that strategy session for building your brand, that's where we can start talking to people about how much you want to be posting, what sort of images you want to include. That posts with images do get a higher level of engagement. And at that point, if they're comfortable with just kind of the basic publishing on Hootsuite, that might be a good opportunity for them to like get excited about making more exciting content. And that might also be the point at which you allow people to start dabbling in creating custom content now that they're familiar with the tone of voice and the templates and those compliance rules.
Okay, just before we go, Mandy and Vicky, can you check again? We fixed in the back end, and I think you should be able to see it now, the templates.
Let's see.
If not, send me an email, please, and I will get back to you as well on the question that you posted on the chat. So,
I see it now. Thank you.
awesome.
Anybody else not see it?
So, Mandy, you're asking a question about the URL instead of the Auli. What Sam demonstrated during this session is how to actually shorten the link so it shows as BNY. It's not going to show as an Auli. Is it going to show as BNY?
Yeah, no, sorry. This was more related to Vicky's question earlier about not being able to see the comments along with her suggested post. I was just adding to that. Is there a way to also see the specific URL? Like, for example, I put Pershing.com and it came up as an Auli. I'm just thinking for us as the marketing team, being that first line of defense, if we could see the URL and we see it's an investment news article, that's probably fine, or something like that. It might just save folks time if they don't have to click on that link to even figure out where it's coming from.
Okay. Sam, do you have any recommendations on this one?
No, I'll have to check into it.
Okay. Yeah. We'll check on it, Mandy, and I will get back to you.
Okay, thanks. It's purely something for the marketing team, so no big deal for the training.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll play around with that and see what's going on. All right, any other comments or questions before we let you go?
No,
all right,
thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining today. If you think of anything else afterwards, or if you've got any questions, please let me know. Also, if there's anything that I should be specifically calling out in terms of that kind of that very, very high level overview of compliance, like for example, if you do have photo guidelines or if you do have anything else that they should be aware of, please let me know and we can either point them to that resource or I can kind of add a little bit of it into the training if that's something that you want me to touch on further.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much, team. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.